Conor Ryan from Boston Sports Journal is here, and Conor was down checking out captain's practices on Monday. Training camp for the Bruins starts next week, but you got to see actual Bruins doing actual hockey things today, Conor. Tell me what stood out to you, if anything, kind of here in day one of captain's practices.
Yeah, absolutely. It was good to see, about 30 players out there, a lot of NHL regulars, but I think maybe the most encouraging thing in terms of what stood out there was a younger player who hasn't really kind of proven himself in Jack Studnicka. And it's going to be a very interesting year for him. You looked at last season and the promise that he had of potentially stepping into a legitimate center role there, whether it be on the third line or what have you. Didn't really work out last year. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that he just wasn't built for NHL hockey at that point. I mean, he entered last year, I think, weighing about 175 pounds. You can have all the skill in the world, but if you don't, tack on some good healthy weight, you're not going to get into that grade A ice. You're not going to get those quality scoring chances if you haven't tacked on that muscle. So this offseason certainly seems like he's learned from that. He's primarily been in Foxborough, actually working out for most of the summer. And you always hear the reports, and again, we've talked about this before, that we're at the part of the preseason where everyone's in the best shape of their lives. And, you always have to kind of take that a little bit with a grain of salt.
Everybody looks awesome. Everyone's an all-star.
Great. 70 points. He's gonna contend for a scoring title this year. But just from the basic eye test of what you see from Jack Studnicka, again, he's not all of a sudden Nick Ritchie out there, right? He hasn't gained 50 pounds, but it looks like he's added on a lot of good healthy weight. He was bringing the puck into grade A ice, moving the puck with authority. And sometimes all it takes is a little bit of that, of just adding on some muscle. And that's the difference between getting knocked off the puck and all of a sudden you're regaining the puck in the offensive blue line, or you're down in grade A ice generating chances. So it's going to be a big camp for him, but we'll see how it all maps out.
It's man strength that what it comes down to. They're kids when you bring them in here, and eventually they kind of start to get a little bit more solid, and it does make a huge difference for him. We'll see if it's enough of a difference to crack the lineup and to make an impact. And again, we talked about last week, Conor, we talked about the tremendous need for them to have some talent coming up the pipeline to replace guys who eventually are going to move on. One of those guys who already moved on, David Krejčí. Again, the tragic irony of the Bruins season is they finally get Krejčí some forwards to play with, and then Krejčí goes bye-bye. But we did get to talk. You got a chance to talk to Craig Smith today about, and it's assumed that second line, it's assumed it's going to be Coyle with Smith and Hall. What's funny is the more secure players on that line are probably Smith and Hall, and the TBD center. Right now you're penciling in Coyle. Smith talked a little bit about playing with a new pivot this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, he mentioned that they're two very different players, David Krejčí and Charlie Coyle. And, as much as David Krejčí is more of one of those playmaking guys that likes to slow down the puck and dictate the pace, Coyle is very much more of a puck possession guy who, likes to bring it into grade A ice and hope that guys are open there. And even though Charlie Coyle may not be, the exact playmaker that a guy like David Krejčí is, you kind of look at where the pieces fit and where a guy like Craig Smith, who's, just a straight shooter, the guy will shoot from like a 90-degree angle out there. You can kind of look at where he fits and how he meshes with a guy like Charlie Coyle. And you can kind of see the recipe for success there if it all works out. Again, it's a big ask for Charlie Coyle to all of a sudden just be inserted in there. And all of a sudden he's a guy who's driving that second line. I think a lot of it's going to fall on guys like Taylor Hall and Craig Smith to really generate that offense and kind of push him along, especially at the start here. But from what Craig Smith said, again, we're at the cherry part of the preseason where everyone's just excited to get out there. But he seems encouraged by how those pieces can kind of fall into place with how he could mesh with a guy like Charlie Coyle in the middle.
Yeah, and we all know it's going to be Krejčí by March anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah,
you're spoiling it. Yeah,
just biding our time.